Could all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. How are you all doing today? Hanging in there. The air conditioning will kick on any moment, so don't worry about it. What brings you all here? Say again? Yeah, I know. What else? Who's here for the first time? Anybody? What brings you here? Now I have ones to pick on, you know. And what did this one tell you about this place?
It's born here.
Yeah? How come you keep bringing people? Anyone here struggling with anything? Anyone here think your struggles are just going to go away? What's the cause of your struggles? Desire. What else? What's the cause of your struggles?
Myself.
Yourself. And who are you stuck with all day long, like it or not? No offense, I'm sure you're great. Yourself, right? So what does that mean? If we cause our suffering from desires and other things, and we're stuck with ourselves all day long, what do we have to learn to do? What do you think? What's top of your head?
Start learning the lessons.
Say again?
Start learning the lessons.
Learning the lesson?
Being a parent to myself.
Yep. Who has a hard time being kind to themselves? Anyone have a magical answer as to why it's so hard to be kind to yourself?
I expect perfection.
You expect perfection. And you're not there yet, Al?
No, I need at least 2 more weeks.
I mean, I've known you a few years. By now, I figured you'd have solved that perfection thing. And here's the question, not that I want to, highlight age or anything in anybody, but how long have you been trying to be perfect?
I guess my whole life.
Your whole life. So about,
my parents up to pleasing,
yeah.
everybody,
So about 42 years of trying to be perfect. You're not there yet. At what point, or what do you think would have to happen for you to say, you know what, I'm going to surrender trying to be perfect?
Yes, I get glimpses of it every so often, like this, lighten up.
Yeah, lighten up.
For me, it's accepting myself because being perfect is not being it. Because how many personalities just like me there are?
Yeah.
Only one.
Only one. So accepting ourselves. It's difficult to, I think, reach a place in our lives where we're just okay with ourselves as we are. And most people who come into this practice, whether they, willingly chose to show up here or got dragged along by, somebody else, and maybe a friend lied and told you all kinds of good stuff about this place, things like that. But what it really comes down to is, can we learn to just be okay with ourselves, as ourselves? And from that place, all of the, as the Buddha taught, the root causes of our suffering, the desire, the cravings, the attachments, the greed, the anger, the ignorance, all of these things kind of stem from just, can I be okay with just myself? And that is, as we say, a practice. Because for most people, we've spent our entire lives having these grand expectations of how we're supposed to be. And we've created an image or a idea or a picture in our mind of how we're supposed to be. And Buddhist teachings really is about shattering all of that, shattering any ideas or expectations of how you are supposed to be, and just waking up and learning to be okay with how you are. But that's contradictory to what most of us have been doing our whole lives. So we continue to practice that, learning to accept, love, and embrace ourselves as we are. And then ultimately, the good news from a Buddhist lens is there's no permanent self. So ultimately, you realize there is no self to be perfect. And then it's a piece of cake. So, yeah. So with that, we'll start with a meditation practice. And to those joining us virtually, our millions of followers all over the world, thank you for being here. Feel free to introduce yourself, say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on the screen. With the meditation practice, a couple things to tell you before we begin, especially for those who might be new. Nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? You're just going to sit, you're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, cause the back to straighten. Same thing if you're in a chair or a bench, relaxing the shoulders, sitting up straight. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable for you. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. You know what? See how there's 3 of you on that bench right there? Can I move you on the end? Do you mind going on the seat over there? Yep. That way you're all just not so packed on top of each other. Either way, yeah. Just trying to spread you all out. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. Expectations, don't have any. Your mind will continue to race. It won't shut off. You won't think nothing. We're just going to sit for a period of time and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness and quiet. Just sitting. Breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting. breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing, once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. This practice is not an escape, as often people think it is. People often jump to meditation or Buddhism as the thing that is going to fix them or heal them or make them all better. The only thing that's going to fix you or heal you or make you all better is yourself. And the only reason you feel that you need to be fixed or healed or all better is because you're attached to the story you've been telling yourself your entire life. When you stop telling that story, which is tied to every past experience, every past trauma, every past heartbreak, every past love, every past experience, is what our present moment is tied to. And we spend so much time there. This practice is learning to be with life as it is, not escaping to the thing, but being with what is. And that's not easy at all. So we continue to practice. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the life around us, life gets simpler. But it starts with allowing yourself an opportunity to just sit, breathe, and let everything settle. And when your mind settles and the business of the day settles, and we begin to see things a little more clearly for how they actually are as opposed to how we want them to be. We spend so much time trying to fix, blame, control others. That's easy. We've been doing that our whole lives. This practice is setting all of that down and looking at our role and our responsibility in our day-to-day lives. So I'll pause there, and for me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. And again, for those joining us virtually, welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for chiming in already. There's the chat box there on the screen somewhere if you joined late. Feel free to type in questions. I'll do my best to respond to the ones online as well. But we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening and just open up to your questions around meditation, Buddhist practice, and we'll go from there.
I've been noticing recently when I sit, a lot of thoughts come up about the future, and they're all over the place. One immediately thinking about my future paths. One moment it'll be a desire to just buy a one-way plane ticket to Thailand and go live in a monastery. The next moment it'll be a desire to go get a picket fence in the suburbs and have 2 kids and all this. And that can happen within one sitting period. So recognizing that my thoughts are all over the place, I was wondering if you have any advice on how to skillfully navigate those type of thoughts of, what am I doing with this life?
Yeah. So for those virtually or maybe in the back that didn't hear, I'll attempt to paraphrase that and then correct me if I'm wrong, and then I'll respond. But to repeat it, you've noticed lately during your meditation, your mind wanders to one way of life, buying a plane ticket, shipping off to Thailand, spending life in a monastery. Your other thought in the future is, getting a white picket fence in the family and that whole story. So your question is, do I have any advice on, your wording here was what really interested me the most, because you said, I forget exactly how you said it, but on like what to do with those thoughts or how to control those thoughts. I don't know exactly how you said it anymore. But Navigate? Navigate those thoughts. Thank you. That word was critical because that was, not that I ignored everything else you said, Dylan, but the word navigate was the one that struck me the most. Ironically, the one that I forgot also. Your question really has multiple questions within it. I'll come back to the navigate part in a minute because that's, I think, the most critical point. But regardless of what your future holds, and it could be none of those. It could be both of those. It could be everywhere in between. The reality is nothing of those things is going to happen until you get up and leave the temple tonight. None of it. Do you know you're going to wake up tomorrow? I mean, I hope you do, So I hope we all do. But there's people sitting there right now, all over the world, every moment, thinking about their future, planning their whole lives, and they're not going to wake up tomorrow. The reason navigate is so important is because what navigate to me really says is a fancy word for control. And that's what I really hear in your question. What's really happening with your question is this grasping of a way of life without the real foundation of knowing what that life is even like. And that is wrestling with the idea of a life that's been planted in your head for 25 years. So you have two ways of life that you're wrestling with. But for some reason, you think that you have the ability to control which way it ends up. Now, I get it. One could argue, well, sure, my thoughts and words and actions, my karma that I create will control what happens. Absolutely, yes, correct. But none of that will happen until you walk out of here tonight. So when you're in meditation, because that's really what your question was about the meditation practice itself. Meditation itself, and this is, well, that was all for everybody, but for everybody as well, isn't about figuring out. It isn't about planning. Meditation is not used as a way to figure out your future. Meditation is used as a tool to stop trying to figure out anything and everything. There's nothing to figure out. Because even if you think you've figured it out, you're not right. It's an absolute illusion. Meaning, even if you figured out, I'm going on this path, you still have to wake up tomorrow. And a million things will happen between this dialogue right now and the potential moment of you waking up tomorrow. And any one of those million things could drastically change what you think you decided on. Right? So, in the meditation practice, we work on letting go of all thought. And that doesn't mean not thinking. Someone just said to me recently that their meditation instructor told them to not think. You're always going to think. There's only one time and one time only you're not thinking. And when is that? When you're dead. And again, I hope we all make it through tonight and tomorrow. But the mind will always race. You will always think. The practice of meditation is not attaching to those thoughts, coming back to the present moment, and realizing all of those thoughts are just illusions and stories and ideas that we think may happen. And the last thing I'll say on that is sometimes the more we try to figure something out, the more we screw it up. If we focus on each step, I don't know if you've heard me use this metaphor before, but the picture book, you ever heard me talk about that? So, someone will help me out because there's a name for them. Where like you have a page and you draw a little sketch. They're like professionally done. And then the next page is like one tiny little line that's different. And the next page, and you have like this 200-page book. But each page is like just one line off. And as you flip through it, it tells the whole story. Nobody? Really? There you go. Thank you. Who said that? Thank you very much. Carla, I knew I could count on you. The flip books. I don't know if that's the real name, but we'll go with that. That is the real name. Flip books. Our whole life is a flip book. One tiny little sliver. Change is another one, an older generational thing, but those Choose Your Own Adventure books, you ever heard of those? Great books. Who's with me on the Choose Your Own Adventure books, right? So you're reading the book, and all of a sudden you're on page 17, and you get a choice to turn to page 27 or 40. And then whatever choice you make, you turn to that page. And then the story continues. Fascinating idea. Like in a novel or whatever. But life isn't always that simple because we can't always, once we choose a certain page, we can't always turn back. So as usual and as expected, no answers to your question. Just more things to think about. Yeah. Yes?
This is a common thing in Buddhism. When you get to a point where you're so accustomed to detachment, you start to lose your attachment to your friends and people around you that you're not afraid to lose ties with your friendships. And then you find yourself content alone, but also then you realize, hey, where did all my friends go?
Yeah, great question. So let me just repeat that, and thanks for sharing that. The question was, the way you put it, and I'll paraphrase again, correct me if I'm wrong, which is in Buddhism, the practice of, as you said, detachment, do you get a place, specifically you're talking about friends, where you're not attached to them anymore, and then maybe you kind of lose all your friends because you're not attached to them, and you're okay with that and content, but then all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait, what happened to all my friends? Is that a fair retelling of your sharing? Yeah.
Is there a middle way, like with balance? Because I feel like I've gone too far into that.
Yes. So, and thank you for saying that word detachment again, because now I want to absolutely do my best to suggest not using the word detach. Let's start there. And let me back up and I'll address your question specifically. But just for everybody, in Buddhism, the teaching of non-attachment. So when you hear detach, and this is maybe just my interpretation of the word detach, but listening to enough people use this word over the years, detach sounds like a cutting off of. And even in the way you described detach, it's like you cut off all of your friends. So in Buddhism, whether it's friends or anything, the practice of non-attachment is not detaching, it's not cutting off, it's not caring. Non-attachment is actually ultimate, absolute love and care for everyone and everything. So it's not cutting them off, it's not losing them, it's absolutely loving them, whoever it may be, whether it's a person or a place or a thing, friends, intimate relationships, family members, whatever it might be. But non-attachment is understanding that they too have their own lives and make their own choices. Non-attachment is not controlling, not trying to fix others, not trying to mold others, not trying to shape them into how we want them to be, but actually loving them for who and how they are. So the reality is, and I'll bring maybe a personal element into this because I went through this very exact thing 17 years ago, right? So my first, like 2003, 2005, I'm like all in on Buddhism. You know, it was the thing that was going to take away all my depression, all my anger, all my sadness, and make my life perfect, right? 2005 rolls around, I ship off to a monastery, and I had abandoned all of my friends because I was Buddhist now, and you know what I thought? I thought I was better than they were. I call this Buddhist arrogance, right? And so what I was doing was I was using this like Buddhist facade to label and judge and critique everybody else. When, like the day before, I was doing everything they were doing. And now all of a sudden, because I became all Buddhist, I was now judging and critiquing them and thinking I'm better than, I'm not suggesting you were, but this was my experience with this exact situation. So I started to judge them as like bad people because they were going and hanging out and doing the things I was doing yesterday with them, you know? And so in my Buddhist arrogance stage, I was kind of cutting them off. And then fast forward a year or two, what I realized was I just wasn't able to be around them and actually be mindful of my actions. So what eventually happened a year later was when I came back from Taiwan, I was able to be with them again. But I didn't have to do what they were doing. I was able to love them and appreciate them for people and to see the joy and sadness in their lives, to see the pain and suffering and the happiness in their lives, just like mine. But it wasn't through a lens of judgment or critique. It was through a lens of friendship and love and care. But I wasn't attached to what they were doing anymore. I didn't feel as if because they were doing it, I had to do it. So it actually strengthened our friendship. Right? Does that make sense? And this is really difficult because what does happen in time, for those who are maybe brand new or, you know, kind of in this beginning stages, 6-month, like honeymoon stage of Buddhism, you're like, wow, Buddhism, everything's great. Is yes, you will start to change. And potentially the people and places and things that you used to see and hang out with and do change. Because that's not what you want to be doing or where you want to be doing it anymore. But that doesn't make that bad or wrong. And this practice will absolutely change you if you put it into your life. And certain people and places and things you may remove from your lives because it just doesn't bring you a sense of joy, a sense of happiness, a sense of safety, a sense of comfort, a sense of protection. I mean, that's what Sangha is. Sangha is all about finding a safe, comfortable place. And your Sangha exists outside of a temple. It's your friends, your family, things like that. But we don't want to cut people off. Is that helpful at all?
Yes, it makes me think of being, or yourself, Buddhism being like a non-sticky bubble, where you can be around them, but not get stick their stuff onto you. And that
Yes.
with everything, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, the last part, absolutely. That's the idea with non-attachment with everything and everyone, is that do you have a family member who drives you crazy?
No, I have.
Well, lucky you. The one person in the room who doesn't have a family member that drives them crazy, right? So I'm sure there's a few more. But think about the people in your lives that you're closest with, and how they bug you, irritate you, drive you crazy. Well, we can't just always remove them from our lives. So we practice patience, we practice understanding, we practice compassion, we practice forgiveness, we practice non-attachment, meaning we're not attached to who and how they are. We love and appreciate them for being them. Because that's what we want, people to love and appreciate us for being us. So, yeah, thanks. Other questions? Thoughts? Yeah, Carla.
I think also for people who are newer to the practice, for me, things like that feeling of indifference that kind of developed first. I was so used to being at such a high level of intensity in my feelings all of the time, but once I slowed down into equanimity, it felt
Mhm.
I had to like redevelop my sense of like I had to find new words, like feeling words to describe my interior experience.
Mhm.
So it felt like it's attachment and a difference, but really it was just that I wasn't attached anymore to my feelings about people's flaws. And like that was like a big part of how I dated people was by who they were and what I didn't like about them and things like that. And so once you don't have that anymore to hang on to, it doesn't feel like what else is left. You have to kind of relearn what there is. So it's like you got to build back that.
Mhm. Yeah, so much of our identity and dialogue and communication is around others, our views and perceptions and critiques and attacks of others. Other thoughts, questions? I remember my mom said something when I told her that in the monastery that you eat in silence. Right? It was 20 minutes in silence, and she said she couldn't imagine eating in silence. And I love my dear sweet mother, but if you think I talk a lot, you should meet her. And she always says, we all got the gift of speaking. And she said, well, if they're all talking about, the monks and nuns, everybody's there, she said, well, if you're all wearing the same thing, if you're all eating the same thing, and if you all look the same, what else is there to talk about? So much of our lives is, like you said, about others. And this practice is waking up to yourself and seeing how it changes you. And that'll cause some friction and some resistance internally, for sure. But see that as growth, as change, as, kind of cultivation. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
I feel like typically in life, the more you practice something or the longer you practice it, the easier it gets or you get better at it. And I feel like with my Buddhist practice, I've been practicing for maybe 7 or 8 years now, and it doesn't feel much easier, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm much better at it either.
Yeah, for sure. So if that's what the first 7 or 8 years have been like, imagine what the next 10 are going to be like. So the question to repeat, for those who didn't hear it, is that you feel like most things in life, you practice, you get better at it, you improve. And for you, practicing for 7 or 8 years, you don't feel like that you've gotten, much better at it, right? Is that fair retelling? Or that it's gotten easier. Thank you. Yeah, or that it's gotten, yes. So one of the things I always share, and you probably heard me say this, is that initially, and that initially could be 2 years, could be 20 years. Initially, this practice of loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, this practice of all these things that Buddhism always talks about doesn't make your life easier. And this is for everybody who's maybe never heard this before. Because what this practice is doing is it's actually, when I say force, I don't mean literally forcing, but if you practice these things, it requires you, is probably a better word, to really look deep inside yourself and make changes. And when you make changes in your life, that's difficult and challenging and creates conflict. Now, the kind of grace period, I don't even know what term to put on it, but when I always say initially it's harder, then the question is, well, when does it ever get easier? And that is really up to each individual, because what happens is the deeper that this practice becomes a part of your life, the more you have to let go of everything else that's over here. And the deeper that you study and practice and share these things, yet continue to hold on to everything, the deeper the struggle is going to be. Because the greater that we begin to intellectually, philosophically, emotionally feel this practice, it moves us, but we're stuck. And what that usually means, not always, but what that usually means is we're not living our life in line and in accord with what is actually helping us through these teachings. Or I should say, what we're actually learning. If you can put your mask on, please. Thank you. Carly, thank you. Yeah. So what that means is the things that are going on over here in our life and the things that are over here in our Buddhist world are not aligned at all. They're completely like different books. And that's why it's not getting easier. And that's why the struggle continues. Buddhist practice, deeper, deeper, deeper intellectual, philosophical, emotional feelings. But to really understand it, it has to come over here into the rest of our life. And you're not there yet. Nothing wrong with that, obviously, you know. In all fairness, I mean, just not complete full disclosure, but I mean, I've known and worked with Olivia on this stuff for like 7-8 years. So I'm trying to not make it too personal, but I also deeply understand your question. And you still have a major disconnect, I believe, in these two areas. It's the exact same place Dylan's in, who I've also worked with for the last 5 or 6 years. You two are in the exact same place of like, yes, I get it, this is it, but wait, what about all this? And we're all there with so many things in our lives. Not just Buddhism, not just the things that, you know, I'm talking about. Every day in our life, we see things and we're like, yes, that moves me. That's important to me. That makes me feel loved and cared for. And then we turn around and we go do something completely opposite. So this practice is about letting go of all those things that are holding us back from, I think, deeply understanding the true nature of who we are. So, does that help at all or give stuff to think about? And I think just in general, to kind of close on that thought, there's a, it's definitely a bit of a roller coaster ride, not just with that question, but with everything within this practice. That as you integrate it into your lives, some things will go smoothly and make perfect sense. And you're feeling good and you're reading, you're studying, you're doing your meditation practice and everything is like clear. And some things will just seem so completely just lost and confused. And your life will continue to be on that roller coaster ride with that approach. And most importantly, and that's what, I always embarrass him or call him out, but that's most importantly, like, Al was saying earlier, he didn't say this, but this is just knowing him, it's sticking with it. And in those moments where you're lost and confused and it seems difficult, it was the last thing the Buddha said before he died. So I'll make it the last thing I say tonight. Before he died, they said, who's going to teach us? They were scared, their teacher was about to pass and they didn't know who would lead them. And, he had taught for 45 years and at 80 years old, there he was, ready to go. And he said, I've left you all the teachings. As it said, he taught 84,000 paths to ending suffering. He said, I've given you all the teachings. I have nothing more to teach you. Now you must strive on with diligence. You must go do the work, is what he said to all of his disciples. So we can hear the teachings day in and day out for our entire lives. But unless we actually begin to do them, we will deeply, deeply struggle. So, all right, so I'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you head out. Our Dharma Bum host, Carly. Thanks, Carly.
Hi, friends. Hi, I'm tonight's host, Carly. Stole my line. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. That's you guys. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Just about every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything else for that matter. A family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which currently meets once a month. And we also offer a half-day silent retreat for the first Saturday of the month with an RSVP requirement. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat cushion before you head out. And thanks for being here. We wish you well, and we hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Carly. Thank you all.